All right, thank you guys for coming back. And now we're gonna have a very special fire chat between Neil and also Wei. I will let you guys introduce yourself. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Victoria, and thanks for having us. And thank you guys for coming out at 11 a.m. on a Saturday to talk about magic internet money. To give you kind of my quick background, originally studied finance and economics at NYU, started my career in more of a traditional finance path, did mergers and acquisitions for a few years at a firm called Evercore, then worked in long-short equity, hedge fund investing, primarily covering media and telecom companies. I've kind of been following crypto for a while in a personal capacity, so decided to switch my career into doing more institutional crypto investing. I'm currently at Galaxy, where I'm a member of the principal investments team, where we focus on investing in both equities and tokens across the crypto ecosystem. In terms of like market verticals, we really focus on, I would say, blockchain infrastructure, DeFi, payments, stablecoins, other kind of financial applications for blockchain. Yeah, I'll turn it over to Wei.
Hey guys, so I'm Wei. My background is technical. I'm a research partner at 1KX. My career in blockchain started with reading white papers and thinking about scalability, thinking about ZK. I was doing a PhD in cryptography and decided that I was generating no impact and decided, the way to actually apply some of my skills was in blockchains. And I spent a year just learning everything about every single protocol out there. Scalability, privacy, rollups, all-ones, consensus. And through that work, I wrote some papers, and that turned into a research position, and I banked capital crypto. That was my first intro into the VC world, and now I lead infrastructure investments at 1KX. At 1KX, we focus on early stage investments, pre-seed, seed, and Series A. We are early investors in CK Sync. We are interested in interoperability, scalability, privacy, and what's up and coming in crypto infrastructure. Very excited to talk about Rollups here today. Hopefully, I get to represent, or hopefully represent a very neutral position among other Rollups, since Brendan is not able to come today.
Yeah, makes sense. So as Wei mentioned, the topic of this panel is the future of Rollups. It was funny, I was actually at dinner with two friends of mine last night who are at HBS, and they're not like super familiar with crypto, and they're asking me to kind of explain what a rollup is. And I kind of use the analogy of like urban planning, like when you're kind of like building and growing out a city, right? There's kind of fundamentally two ways you can build or grow a city. You can kind of expand outwards horizontally, or you can scale it vertically by building upwards, right? And I kind of think like, as it pertains to blockchain scaling and rollups, I kind of like to use this, like, I think it's like a very good mental model to think of it that way. And I know Wei has spent a lot of time thinking about vertical versus horizontal scaling and rollups. So yeah, maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. So this is something that I've been talking about a lot in the past couple of months. It's a very simple concept. So there's two types of scaling. One is called vertical scaling, and one is called horizontal scaling. What is vertical scaling? Well, think about this room, right? This room, I think, holds maybe 100 people. If you make this room bigger, that's vertically scaling the capacity of this resource, the seating capacity of this room. What is horizontal scaling? Well, it is adding more rooms, right? We only sit 150 people, but if you add more rooms, the building will have more capacity. And if you think about Ethereum, it is a single global shared resource. And block space is limited. And to scale that, right, to add more gas limits to Ethereum, we're vertically scaling that settlement layer. And rollups, in some sense, is a way to horizontally scale Ethereum. You could add more and more rollups, but if you closely inspect what is going on with the bottlenecks, you see that the DA layer is actually a shared resource. And it could become a bottleneck, right? So with 4844, we increased the limit of Ethereum's data throughput, but we're starting to hit contention on that layer, especially with more traffic to come. And so I'm very interested in looking at ways that rollups, or Altos in general, can horizontally scale without incurring bottlenecks onto the L1 or any global shared resource. And I call that horizontal scaling. And there are multiple ways to do it, but I guess I'll stop here and we can dive into details there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a perfect segue to kind of a topic I want to address, which was kind of thinking through the technical trade-offs of kind of implementing a zero knowledge-based rollup versus an optimistic rollup. I think in particular, from like an investor standpoint, Obviously, I think Optimism and Arbitrum were kind of first to market with their optimistic rollups, and you've kind of seen like some of the more zero knowledge based rollups kind of enter the market later, and as a result, they basically kind of fell behind from like a first mover go to market perspective. Like, how much do you think like like users at the end of the day care about those technical trade offs versus kind of just go to market like first mover advantage?
Yeah, this is a very, very good question. I think this might be a contrarian take. The form factor of the rollup and your time to market and your go to market definitely matters more than the exact technical implementation, I think. If you look at Optimism, recently they added fraud proofs to the testnet, right? It's still not yet live on mainnet, but it has been live for, I think, more than 2 years, right? And that enables them to build the ecosystem. I think what ZK Rollup should have done was to really launch something earlier in a way that the system can be turned into a ZK Rollup over time. It takes a long time to build the ZK circuits, right? And if you look at Polygon, Scroll, ZK Sync, it's a multi-year effort. But during that time, I think maybe we could have parallelized this effort of community building versus building a technical system. And if you look at kind of what optimistic rollup have done, I think it's not really optimistic is better than ZK and easier to build. I think maybe they have parallelized efforts better. But fundamentally, I think in terms of the tech, I'll quote maybe ZK Sync's tagline, right? ZK is the end game. I think there's no reason why optimistic rollups can't move to ZK and inherit the benefits of ZK once the cost of proving comes down significantly, because there's a lot of benefits to faster settlement time, and you can compress the call data even further for optimistic rollups, and you get better interoperability because of faster settlement.
Makes sense. I think that's also kind of a nice segue to, I think, another kind of very topical area within rollups, which is talking about like the right settlement layer for rollups. I think you've kind of been seeing a lot of activity, particularly for kind of building layer 2s on Bitcoin, and then kind of contrasting that versus kind of.
Actually, can I throw a question back at you?
Oh,
I think, I want to hear your answer as well to that. Optimistic versus ZK.
Oh, optimistic versus ZK. I think kind of empirically, if you look at the market and like user traction, it would kind of tell you that first mover advantage and go to market have been kind of more important than kind of underlying like cryptography in a sense. And I think obviously if you kind of look at the traction data, Arbitrum and Optimism have kind of been much more successful in that lens versus some of the other ZK-based rollups. That's not to say that I think ZK rollups don't have kind of like certain technical advantages. But yeah, I mean, I think empirically it's kind of clear that optimistic rollups have been more successful to date in terms of traction, TVL, other KPIs, yeah.
Market rollups.
Yeah, basically, you could kind of think of it that way. But yeah, going back to where I was going before, I think particularly like the right settlement layer for layer 2s has been very top of mind for a lot of people in the industry and the ecosystem. I'm curious what you kind of think about building rollups on Bitcoin versus Ethereum and maybe even potentially Solana.
Yeah, so this is a great question. I definitely think Bitcoin rollups, Bitcoin L2s, is something that's very interesting. And so if you look at why do you need a settlement layer, I think there's largely two reasons. One is the security aspects of having a settlement layer that is strongly kind of resistant to reorganization, right? With Bitcoin, that's from proof of work. With Ethereum, that's because there's a lot of stake in Ethereum proof of stake. And the second reason for having a shared settlement layer is the interoperability of assets, right? So if you have a rollup on Ethereum, automatically you get all the benefits of all the assets issued on that L1. There's some caveats, for example, which I will probably not mention. For example, stable coins. Sometimes they will want you to kind of mint a non-bridge version for USDC. But anyways, for most assets like Ethereum or DeFi tokens, if you mint a token on L1, you automatically get that token onto L2 ecosystems or L3s on top of those L2s, right? And so I think the benefit is really twofold. And for the perspective of the user, really it's the second point. It's the assets that matters most. And Bitcoin still have half of the crypto market cap today. And so that's why I think getting a fully secure L2 of the Bitcoin really unlocks effectively half of the assets in crypto. Onto DeFi, lending and restaking and other DeFi primitives. And that's something that we have not had in a trustless manner. So I think that's something that's really interesting. Yeah.
I mean, kind of playing devil's advocate here, though, I think when you kind of look at kind of the primary use case for Bitcoin, right, it's kind of buy and hold, like store value, right? Like, I think kind of the general Bitcoin ethos is like, you don't really kind of want to play around in different applications with your Bitcoin. You kind of want to just store it in like a cold wallet somewhere and like forget about it. Like, I'm curious how you kind of think about that on balance.
After this, and throw it back at you, Neil, because I think if you have an asset that's not currently generating yields, you'll be interested to have it generate yield, right? And perhaps you're also interested to get liquidity on the assets because everybody needs cash sometimes, right? And you don't want to sell your Bitcoin if it comes down to that. And I think lending and opportunity for yields are will be of inherent demand once that's enabled without risk, like without the risk that this system is actually trusted, right? Bitcoin's fully decentralized, like trust minimized, and if you can enable those functionalities with similar levels of trustlessness, I think people will adopt it. What do you think, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point in terms of like, particularly I think the yield aspect. I think human beings are kind of like naturally attracted to yield, and I think even with Bitcoin, I think the opportunity to get yield, I think for a lot of Bitcoin holders will probably be too good to pass up in some sense. I guess maybe pivoting a little, I'm curious what you kind of think about like general purpose rollups versus kind of, I'm increasingly seeing in the market a lot of projects fundraising for more specialized applications for layer 2 rollups. Yeah, I would love to get your take on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think I maybe have less of a well thought out response here, but I think you'll probably enlighten us better. But I think there's definitely a place for both. If you look at EVM rollups, there's still a lot of room to grow in terms of scalability, right? There's a lot of efforts currently to scale EVM as execution environment, but that is not to say that there's no space for special purpose L2s. I think special purpose L2s can really capture niche markets. So for example, for DEXs, if you want a full order book exchange, I do think there's an advantage to building that in a custom manner. And if you think about, is it possible to run FTX or Coinbase fully on EVM? And the answer is that's probably going to be very, very hard. And it's probably going to be some type of specialized L2 system that enables self-custody to operate at the same scale as Coinbase.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think from my perspective, I think there are going to emerge specialized use cases for kind of application-specific rollups. I think the two that are really top of mind for me are probably around payments and having kind of a very dedicated payments-focused L2. I think particularly for basic payments, remittance, cross-border payments, things like that. I think that's like a very core established use case for blockchains, and it kind of makes sense for that execution environment to be on a specialized layer 2. One other one I think our team has been thinking a lot about is RWAs. I think that's also been very topical in the industry. And I think for a variety of reasons, there's a lot of pain points around onboarding both users and applications for RWAs, and I think it makes sense for there to kind of be like a dedicated layer 2 home for those assets. I think to your point on execution environment, one other kind of very topical debate right now in the industry is around like having like EVM versus SVM based rollups. I think obviously Eclipse is kind of leading the charge on kind of SVM based rollups. I'm curious how you kind of think about the technical merits of one versus the other.
Yeah, this is a very complex question to unpack. I think EVM has not been traditionally a optimized execution environment, but it's starting to change. Solana VM was designed from the ground up by like high performance like engineers that understand how to build those systems to very, very high transaction throughput, right? And EVM is just starting to catch up, but it has inherent downsides that it cannot overcome. And I do think there's definitely like, because Solana's designed for a particular form factor, right? There's inherently more parallelization possible on Solana than EVM if you do it speculatively. If you look at what Monad is trying to do and what Mega ETH is trying to do. So I think EVMs will catch up, but Solana it definitely serves a niche here.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think the Solana virtual machine environment, I think, just lends itself better to certain application-specific use cases. That I think it kind of makes sense for certain dApps to be using versus kind of EVM, which kind of suffers from certain technical constraints. I know we're kind of running up on time here, so I figured we'd kind of round out with closing thoughts. I think kind of like as it pertains to the future of rollups, the way our team kind of thinks about it from like an investment standpoint is there's probably going to be long-term like a handful of big general purpose like layer 2 winners. And then I think you're probably going to see like a tail of like more specific layer 2s with very specific applications in mind. And I think that'll be kind of where a lot of the value accrual occurs. Yeah, I'd be curious to get your view there as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's still a lot of, and I will offer the technical perspective. I think there's still a lot of unsolved infrastructure questions. I think we're solving some of them with, for example, shared sequencers. And I think there's still interoperability question, which is, how do users interact with these systems in a more seamless way? It's both a UX problem, but also infrastructure problem. If you look at cross rollup bridging, there's still a lot of risk that cross-chain liquidity providers have to take on, and I think infrastructure can catch up to help mitigate that risk further. I think, yeah, there's still a lot of exciting work in terms of, for example, validiums. How can you build a rollup without a shared DA layer and have privacy guarantee? These are areas that I'm personally and as a researcher, as an investor, that I'm really interested in. I think there's still more infrastructure to come to make this space a lot better. And also, one final point, I do think ZK is the end game for L2s, for rollups. And with the advent of general purpose ZK VMs and hardware acceleration, the DevX, the dev velocity, and the cost is really going to come down in the next couple of years. And I think the folks at EF like Vitalik and Justin Drake have the same sentiment that we'll start to see real-time ZK EVM in the next couple of years. So very exciting time to come.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense. We're up on time here, so just wanted to thank you guys and thank you, Wei, for sharing your perspective. I think we have a follow-up Q&A in a separate room as well if you guys have any questions.
Thanks, guys.